This presentation is about a phenomenon called resurgence. It was filmed by first-year psychology students at Ulster University. The goal of the recording was to not only show an example of resurgence, but also to address some issues associated with data collection and the development of an explanation when observing behaviour. The exercise you are about to see involves the shaping game, where students learn how to shape behaviour with a clicker. The actual behaviour chosen to be shaped in this session was quite arbitrary, and it will be shown shortly. First though, I want you to note that behind this chair is a pen. It is sitting on the speakers in the lecture theatre where the shaping takes place. The pen will be used in the shaping exercise. The teacher begins his session by demonstrating the initial target behaviour to be shaped. In this instance, it is picking up the pen and holding it high in the air for an extended period of time.
Just working the hands in, okay? And he can walk around with it if he wants, but I want to help, right? But just try and stop somewhere, doesn't matter where of it, but as long as you stop with the hand up, and you keep reinforcing that, okay? And at some point, just stop reinforcing it. Stop completely. And then go back to his feet. Okay? Now what we should see is the hand coming down, and then you walk. Okay? So I want you to get him to walk over to here, and get him to stop here. Yeah. Okay? So you have to stop here, and then stop reinforcing it. No more. That's it, finished. Yeah. What we're looking for is the appearance of that. Now, if this happens, it's called resurgence. Okay? A behaviour that was previously reinforced and was put on extinction resurfaces. That's all we're going to try and demonstrate, that actually is a basic principle. Alright? So, now, but there's another element to this. So while Darren's doing that work, I need 3 people to collect data. So, you guys are going to be here, aren't you? What I have here is just a floor map. I came in and drew the floor map. You're going to be in the whole session, aren't you? You guys are going to video, right? Right. The way I want you to do this, if you put your pen on the starting point where the persons will be here, I want you to just trace roughly where they walk. Just trace it. Okay? But when Darren clicks, I want you to put a wee tick in the line. That's all. So if I click here, you have a wee tick in the line. So it'll look like that, the wee ticks like that. Okay? But make them smaller because it'd be. Now, can somebody else? Can you do me a favour? Can you just count the total number of clicks? Just that. Yeah. Yeah, just do. Okay, just count the total.
Having explained the behaviour to be shaped and the data to be collected, the teacher explains why 2 people had been asked to leave the room at the very start. The first person, Matthew, volunteered to be the person whose behaviour is shaped, so it was important for him to not be present when the target behaviour was being described. The second person, Sarah, volunteered to interview Matthew after his behaviour had been shaped. The point of this was to demonstrate that despite feedback from Matthew, Sarah would still be very much in the dark as to what transpired during the shaping exercise. In other words, the goal here was to show the audience the extent of the information that Sarah would be blind to, because of the limitations of a typical interview. This is important, because too often it is assumed that simply asking someone about their experience of something, or produced all the needed information to have a clear picture of the behaviour in question, as well as key independent variables responsible for it. Remember, in the shaping game, the key independent variable is the sequence of behavior-consequence relations provided by the person doing the shaping. Will Sarah have any idea of how the clicks were distributed in time, or even the total number of clicks?
Now, the reason I've sent the second person out is that when we finish the session or finish the shaping, that second person is going to come in and interview Matthew and ask him what he did. That's all. So you can ask him any question. And if we don't get the resurgence, it's immaterial. Okay? But it'd be nice if it happens. It doesn't always happen, right? But the attention this time is on data collection. I want you to listen to the questions she asks, because it will not be about the number of clicks. It will not be about his actual experiences. It will be a verbal report. What did you do? And how many times will Matthew make reference to the clicks? How many clicks did you get? He won't be counting that. So that's a real world simulation. When somebody comes to interview you, you can't tell them everything. You're collecting a very brief summary of the behaviours that you engaged in. And that's a problem for questionnaires. Fill in this questionnaire. What did you do the other night? You're going to miss out an awful lot. So what we're going to see is what the second person did not see. That's the point. Mm-hmm. And that shows the limitations.
At this point, Matthew is brought into the lecture theatre so the shaping can begin.
Follow me, we'll start down here. Just freeze for a second. Just hang on. Take a few seconds to watch it. Now,
From this point on, there will be no more reinforcers delivered for arm raising. In other words, arm raising is put on extinction. Instead, reinforcers will be provided for a different behaviour. Walking towards the desk on the other side of the room. Walking is now put on extinction. Now the interview begins.
Matthew, what just happened?
I had to walk around with a marker.
Why?
I don't know.
Where did you walk?
I started over there, and then I walked over there, and then I walked over here.
How did you know where to go?
I just clicked when I did a good thing.
Was it difficult?
Very
How did you feel?
stressed.
On 2 occasions, Matthew made reference to his feelings, something we will pick up on in just a moment. The first point I want you to note is that it is likely the person who interviewed him might conclude that Matthew was stressed because the task was difficult for him. But all she has is his verbal report of his feelings. She has no knowledge of what actually happened to produce those feelings. This is where data collection is important. Of course, Matthew's report of his feelings is to be viewed as data. However, as natural scientists, we want to account for his feelings, and this means we need a different kind of data. We need to have data on what led to those feelings. Presumably, the data collected by the 3 students who recorded Matthew's behaviour will reveal what went on. So, let's look at the data that were recorded. Here is the first view of the 3 sets of data recordings. I bet you are surprised at how different they look from each other. Each observer saw the same thing, but the data tell a different story. To be honest, this is what I expected to see. The point of this part of the exercise was to drive home the importance of training in data recording. Without extensive training, this will always happen. So, students who collected these data, please relax, for it is no reflection on you, but rather a reflection on what is likely to happen when training is not provided. Ideally, the data should have been collected so precisely that an animator could recreate everything that happened during the exercise. The data collected here, however, would not have been useful to the animator when it comes to the accuracy needed to reproduce the scene. That said, does it automatically follow that the person who conducted the interview would have changed her conclusion that Matthew was stressed because the task was difficult? In my experience, the answer is no. I say this because she would need to know about the different perspective used in the development of a behavioral explanation. Here is the shortcut to understanding this perspective. Consider the following statement. If the goal had been to make Matthew feel stressed, then the person doing the shaping did a great job. Saying this points to the experiences that produced the stress. And those experiences were simply times when a consequence was produced. It was the sequence of clicks, and this teaching context, that produced the stress. This is an indisputable fact. Had Darren been more experienced in shaping, the degree of stress would have been significantly reduced, because the sequence of clicks would have been very different. Interestingly, going back to the data sheets, we see that one student actually recorded a version of the incident black spot where the majority of the stress was generated. As an aside, parents should note that it is likely that this is where a temper tantrum might appear. During previous shaping sessions with this class of students, the teacher made a point that even in these kinds of role plays, real feelings are being generated. The importance of knowing how to connect feelings to environmental contingencies cannot be underestimated. In fact, studying behavior analysis is about increasing our awareness of how we are affected by our interaction with the environment.
What was the end result?
I stood here and held the marker up.
Is that enough?
As long as you're happy you've got enough.
Where did you start?
I started there.
And did you have to take a specific path?
I don't know.
Can you show me what you did?
Okay. So I started here. I went this way. I put the marker up. Held it here. Then I walked over here. I held it up and it clapped for me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
To sum up, there were several points to note in this version of the shaping game. First, this was a demonstration of a phenomenon called resurgence. So what I hear someone saying, it doesn't happen in the real world. Well, try saying that to Matthew. Was this not a real-world experience for him? A better answer comes from this screenshot of a publication. Pause the video here to give yourself time to read it. Note the more accurate definition of resurgence than the simplified version I have been using throughout this presentation. The reference for the publication follows this extract. The class was told in advance that Matthew would do what they saw. When he did it, we can now ask questions as to whether the explanation for his behavior is to be found in his thoughts, or from him exercising his free will, or whether something else is at work. When scientists study basic principles of behavior, their findings mean that questions need framed differently. This is because we are now faced with the challenge of embracing the existence of natural laws that find expression in what we do. The final point concerns the use of questionnaires in research. When questionnaires are used, the data they generate are inferior to data collected from actual observations of behavior and the independent variables that influence it.